Hey everybody, it's Mike Sullivan with Born to Shine. Today we have an awesome guest. Her name is Paula Newell, and she is the superintendent over at a great school district. And I'm gonna mess it up. It's Port Allegany, Port Allegany,
Port Allegany. You were
Port
so
Alleg,
close.
Port Allegany in Pennsylvania. So Paula, thank you so much for carving out some time to be with us today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me.
And what was your journey like to become a superintendent? Because that's such a important role. A lot of people are looking up to you for your guidance, your leadership, your wisdom. What was that journey like?
Yeah, I had a very non-traditional journey. So I was not going to be a teacher, to be quite honest with you.
Hmm.
Ended up doing 2 years of college and realizing I didn't really know what I wanted to be when I grew up, and I went
Mm.
into the military. So I was in the Army for a while. When I got out of the Army, I went into finance because it just seemed like the right thing to do, but decided to take some time off with my kids. Just I was going to take like 6 months. And the very next Monday, I got a call from my kids' school asking if I would be willing to sub. So my day sub, so I didn't have any of that time off.
Mm.
That day sub turned into a long-term sub because the lady could not come back for health reasons. And
Hmm.
I just fell in love with education. I realized that, okay, this is where I'm supposed to be. So I finished up school, got all that done. Couple of years into education, I had someone come up to, my husband's an educator as well,
Mm.
and come up to us and talk to us about international education. So we took the leap. We have 4 children, and at the time they were all little, and went over to actually Indonesia for a while.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's
so we
cool.
were in Indonesia, and then we've been in Austria and in Mexico, and just really enjoyed a lot of time in international education. Um, International education seems really big, but it's actually a really small world of educators. I learned a lot, and I realized that I love working with kids in the classroom, and I love meeting them where they're at.
Mm.
And I started seeing that not every classroom looked the same. And I thought maybe I could have an impact if I went into administration.
Mm.
So I actually took the route through being a counselor. So I went and got my school counseling certification and started working with kids that way. Ended up then in a principal's role because it's just that idea of if I'm impacting 10 people here, maybe I can impact, more people here, that kind of thought process. Um, Loved it. Really love coaching teachers. Really enjoyed that part. Curriculum's a big deal to me. I really like working with the curriculum. So I was a school counselor, an assistant principal, a principal, and then a director of curriculum instruction at the district level before I ended up as a superintendent. Never wanted to be a superintendent, never thought I'd be a superintendent because I always wanted to be with the kids.
Hmm.
But I'm finding the impact that I can make in this role significantly impacts the kids, and that's really important to me.
Wow, that is such a cool story, Paula. I love that. And the military, finance, subbing, long sub, and then going all over the world, international. That is so cool. That's really unique. And
Yeah.
and when you were K through 12, Paula, was there anything that you struggled with? Like for me, I was bullied in third grade to the point that I started to develop severe anxiety, even depression, had ADD, OCD. I was A through Z. I was a mess, and all those big feelings in a little body. And I was
Yeah.
curious, because Born to Shine is all about mental health support. So I'm curious, was there anything when you were a K through 12 kiddo that you struggled with?
Yeah. Anxiety was a big deal for me, but and I've had to learn coping mechanisms, right?
Hmm.
Everyone comes out and they have to learn how to cope with different parts of their personality. For me, I always needed to make an A. I always needed to do the right thing, and structure is a big deal to me. So when things would kind of get off kilter,
Hmm.
or I felt like I didn't know what was going to happen next, or I felt like I didn't know the material as well, even going all the way through college, honestly, even today,
Mm.
um, that creates a lot of anxiety and within me. The military was great because the military, like it's black and white, right? But the rest
Structure.
of the world is
Yeah,
very, very gray.
right.
So you have to learn how to maneuver in the gray, knowing that it makes you kind of uncomfortable. And so structure is a big deal to me. And that's not a big deal to most people, I find, it's not the same. And I think culturally we changed over the years to where we live in a world that's much more relaxed,
Hmm.
less point A to point B. And so I joke with my husband a little bit that I kind of sometimes feel like a foreigner in a different land, trying to figure it out depending on where we're at. If we're in a meeting and someone goes, whatever you think, that sounds fine. Anxiety builds within me because I really would like to have a plan. I'd really like to know, well, what about if that doesn't work? How about a plan B? And I've
Mhm.
been that way my whole life.
Mm.
I have learned, though, like my husband jokes, we'll go on vacation and I'll have plan A, B, C, and D. And if none of those work out, I'm okay now. Like I've learned it, but I still, for my own internal mechanism, have to create some sort of a plan. It's just who I am.
Yeah, no, and that's great. And God doesn't make mistakes. No, you're not an accident. No one is. He made you exactly the way he did to fulfill his purpose, right? You have the planning skill, and maybe your husband has a skill set of improvising. Maybe it's just, hey, that's okay. Let's just do this. And wow. And then together, that's a great team, you know?
Yeah,
So,
you nailed it. Yeah, he rides by the seat of his pants.
yeah.
God said, "Here, this is going to be funny," and put us together. And it's been 30 years of a great ride, though. Like there's no mistakes there. It was been perfect. So.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's so cool. And then, is there anything that you're noticing, Paula, within your school district and your kiddos that has helped them with their emotional well-being, their mental health, and beyond the counselor and psychologist, because they're phenomenal. And I know a lot of them and love them all, and their role is so important. But something even beyond that, like, is there something really unique you've noticed that's helping, or in a perfect world, what would you love to see more of for this school year next year?
Yeah, well, I can tell you that there's just not enough. There's
Right,
not enough supports.
right.
Our kids, and I think it's a good thing in a weird, weird way. And let me kind of explain that a little bit. But
Mm,
when I was growing up, I would have never gone to anyone and say, I'm struggling with anxiety. I would have never gone to one and say, things are out of balance and I'm not handling it really well.
same.
Can you help me with that? Right? That just didn't happen.
Right.
You internalized that stuff. You just shoved it way down deep and you
Mm-hmm.
kept on moving. And I think there was part of my work ethic and who I am today benefited from that, but it really was unhealthy,
Mm,
right? I
mm-hmm.
had to learn coping mechanisms, but I didn't really have support. So I think the fact that we talk about it more today is incredibly important. Um,
Amen.
but I also think that adding emphasis to it in some ways creates confusion for students.
Mm,
They're still trying to figure out who they are. So
mm,
they're hearing that all of these things exist and we're talking about it, and that's good. But now they're trying to self-identify like, well, is that me? Is that why I'm struggling?
mm.
So really the mental health supports, there's just not enough. We're
Right,
talking about it, but we
right,
don't have enough people trained to come alongside kids and say, well, let's talk it out. What have you
right,
got?
right.
And teachers now are wearing therapist hats
Mm-hmm.
just as a part of organically who we are as teachers and working
Right,
with students. There's no way you can teach a student math if they're not in a place where they can learn math.
right.
So you're having to take a really big step back
Mm-hmm.
and talk about other things just to get to the point where you can teach them math.
Exactly. And that's such a good indicator too of that the kids are in need of more because now the teachers are not only the teachers, they're also the therapists. So,
Right. So really what I feel like we need is more training for teachers.
mm-hmm.
We just had a training in our school district for trauma-informed learning.
Mm,
And really it was just to give our teachers a tool to realize everyone has some level of trauma.
mm-hmm.
Um, but most educators honestly come from a background because they went to college, they went to university, they come from a background where they've had some kind of support system,
Mm-hmm.
some type of encouragement to get them there.
Right.
A lot of the kids sitting in front of us today, we can't relate to because they have a vastly different
Mm-hmm.
background and family dynamic. And, some of these kids are just worried about, will I be warm? Will I have food? Um, and their parents have, maybe not necessarily undiagnosed issues, but untreated, mental health issues and whatnot as well. And they're seeing some of that play out. So we need to give educators training to be able to not fix it. We're never going to fix it. And that's not what
Right.
we're called to do,
Right.
but to empathize and listen and just have a couple of tools in our tool belt to say, hey, this kid is saying this, so I can talk through that, or here's a referral system. You know what I mean? Whatever that looks like, they just need to have some pathways to support. I'll be honest though, in our area up here in rural Pennsylvania, you don't have a lot of people moving to the rural area. So people who go and they become psychologists and school psychologists, Philly might have them, Pittsburgh
Mm-hmm.
might have them, but rural
Mm-hmm.
PA doesn't.
Mm,
So we're having to lean into some virtual options.
mm,
We're having to lean into, Penn State University has a clinic for their graduate and doctorate students to get their clinical hours. So
mm.
we're using students actually to help but we're having to reach all over the place. We're pulling from everywhere to get that support. Um, I would love to see if you're a listener out there and you love helping kids and you're interested in psychology at all, go into school psychology. You can do it. You can do it. You can do hard things. You can succeed, and then you can make a huge impact. So it's just an area that's never going to go away. That
Hmm.
we desperately need the help, and there are kids who are going to benefit from that pathway that you take. So
Amen. Amen, Paula.
yeah.
That's such a beautiful thought, and I 100% agree. And if there's a whatever's on your heart, maybe some parting words or words of encouragement to whoever's listening, if it's another admin or if it's a parent or if it's a student, whatever's on your heart, that you any kind of words of edification or encouragement, what would that be?
Yeah, I think, I had a student actually years ago tell me to read a book called, basically, You Can Do Hard Things.
Mm,
And it was really a great book because I think a lot of times things get hard and we just say, hey, I'm going to go left or I'm going to go right.
mm,
Persevere. You can do a lot more than you think you can. And for those of you out there who are struggling with anxiety or depression, you know, you may never, I think that we set people up for like this idea that you're going to get rid of that. This may be a part of it's part of who I am
hmm.
every single day,
Right,
but that doesn't define who I am
right.
every single
You're
day. It's
more
a
than
part of
that.
me. It's a
Right.
part of the way I was made. I use that to actually support my skill set and
Hmm.
leadership that
Hmm.
helps drive me, but it doesn't define me. And so I think that if you're out there and you're struggling with something, embrace that. That's a part of who you are, but persevere through it. There's big things on the horizon.
Love it. Paula, thank you so much for that and your time and your words of wisdom.
Yeah.
Just love it. Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a blessing. Thank you.